Hi there, it's Miss Teresa again here with Skills U, and we're going to be working on Lesson 2 today. In the last two lessons, in the introduction and Lesson 1, we started talking about maps. That's what this unit's all about, is maps. This is part of your GED studies for your social studies. It's Unit 1. And in the maps part, we're learning how to read the key, how to identify and understand different types of vocabulary. And in this lesson, we're going to be learning about the difference between weather and climate, and also how to use or read a climograph. A climograph. Okay, so anyway, we're going to start off right here, where this tells you exactly the difference between weather and climate. Weather is that short-term variation, excuse me, like yesterday it was raining, today it's sunny, tomorrow's supposed to be hot. That gives you an idea of what the weather is going to be on a daily basis. But climate is something that's more of a long term. Like here it talks about climate change and how it's become a burning issue worldwide. We see the results of global warming through the glaciers that are melting. And the effect of that would be that the ocean level will be rising, because that water from the glaciers does have to go somewhere. So that is one of the things we're going to be talking about in this lesson as well, are some of the reading skills that you've learned from your RLA and other lessons, and how they transfer to social studies. So in that effect, I just used one of the words, cause and effect. So the cause would be the glaciers melting, and the effect would be the ocean levels rising. So with weather, like I said, it's short term. With climate, it's long term. But before we get too much more into this, let's go ahead and talk about this. You need to start your GED studies. This is something that's been kind of like on the wayside, and now that we're all quarantined and we're not allowed to go out and do what we usually would do, and you need something to do, go ahead or if you want to pick up from the last time you started on it, maybe it's been a year or so and you're like, well, I really should get back into that. Or maybe you're getting ready to go to college and you already know that you need some help with math or some of your language skills, or you're in the middle of your college and you're a transition student where you're needing to pick up on some of those new skills, work on those skills. Give us a call at 502-213-5212, or you can look for us on YouTube at our YouTube channel, which is Skills U Online. There is a discussion tab there. You can leave us a message there. We check that about every day, and we'll be more than happy to direct you in the path that you need to go in order to get started. Or you can look for us on our Facebook page at JCTC Skills U. Leave us a message there in the messenger box. Again, we'll be more than happy to direct you to where you need to go, get you connected with the people you need to work with, and getting enrolled and getting started and getting back on track. So give us a call, drop us a line, give us a message. So again, like I said earlier, a lot of your reading skills or tools play into your social studies as well. We've already talking about cause and effect, where we were talking about the difference between long-term and short-term weather and climate, and how that affects. And then we talked about how the cause would be the glaciers melting and the effect would be the ocean levels rising. So in this portion of this lesson, we're going to be talking about skimming and scanning. Now these are two tools that are really important to use, not only in your RLA or your social studies GED test, but pretty much anything that you know you're going to have a time limit on, because you're not going to have enough time to read through everything. You want to be able to use some kind of tool to get the understanding you need to answer the questions that are given to you. So with skimming, as it says here, it's reading rapidly in order to get a general overview of the material, whereas scanning is reading rapidly in order to find specific facts. So if you're like me, sometimes I'm going to do some skimming over a newspaper article, and then I'll scan even deeper to find specific points that I want to read about. And the reason why it's good to know about this is you do have that time limit when you're taking these tests. So like with social studies, you only have 65 minutes and you've got about 50 questions that you have to answer. And so it's hard to be able to read and word for word or analyze that cartoon, that political cartoon, and then answer the questions. So I'm going to give you a little bit of hints, tidbits of information to help you with that. And it tells you right here, remember, you only have about 90 seconds for each item. So, keep all that in mind as you're going through your studies for your tests. So the questions on the social studies test are based on both regular textual passages and visual materials. So when you plan your time for answering the questions, you have to consider the amount of time it takes to read both of those types of materials. When you come to a prose passage, read the answers first and then skim the passage to find the answers. And if this method doesn't work, then go back and read the passage carefully, looking for the answers. This way you take more time only if you need to. And because you have just a little bit of time to gather all the information you can from a visual material, like I said earlier, the political cartoon, and then answer questions about it, you can't really study the map or chart or the cartoon for very long. You have to skim it the way you would skim a paragraph, and then read the questions that relate to the particular visual, and then that will help you read that first, and then that will help you figure out what you need to look for as you skim the material. So if you're reading, like I said, the prose passage, that's like if you have a paragraph and then you have to answer questions about it, and then the cartoon or the map, that's when you would go back and do the skim. So look at those questions first, then go back and skim and scan. And if you're not quite sure how quickly you can answer questions based on this, visual materials or prose, whichever, time yourself, test yourself. There's some websites online that you can go to find sample questions for the test. You can use those and then time yourself and see how long it takes for you to answer it. Remember, if it takes more than 90 seconds, oh my, 90 seconds, that's 1.5 minutes, then you probably need to work on it some. Okay, so here we're going to be using another reading strategy. So far we've used skimming and scanning, we've used cause and effect, and in this part of the lesson we're going to be using comparing and contrasting. So we've already done a little bit of this. We did this at the beginning of the lesson, where we're talking about the difference between weather and climate. Weather is different. It does change from day to day. It's short term. Climate doesn't change from day to day, but it has a weather pattern that lasts over a period of time. And we're going to look at some of that here in just a little bit. But remember, weather includes temperature for each day, whereas climate includes temperatures for the full year. So you've still got some commonalities there, and it is temperature, but the differences are how long. And the same thing with wind, which it is included in weather for each day, but with a climate, it's during the year. Clouds for each day, and then clouds for during the year when it comes to climate. Weather includes precipitation each day, and then climate includes it for the year. And then weather also includes humidity for the day, and then climate includes it for the year. So what I'm saying is that you have your common themes, if you want to put it that way. You've got temperature, wind, clouds, precipitation, humidity, but depending on how long of the measurement depends on whether they're talking it as a weather-related issue or a climatic issue, okay? All right, so let's look at some of the effects of weather and climate. As we've been talking about, weather is short-term and climate is long-term. But there are different regions that have different climates. If you remember in I think it was the introduction, we talked about the different climates, and the 6 major climates, there are several, but the 6 major climates are desert or arid, tropical, Mediterranean, polar, temperate, and then mild and moderate. So in this area, it gives you some different areas, and also these can kind of fluctuate throughout one landmass. So where we might think of the North Pole as being more polar, if you look on this second map here, right here, you see that the upper right hand, that's the upper east, northeast, has some blue and white. So they're a little bit polar sometimes during the year too. But since we have, even though it doesn't always seem like it, we do have 4 seasons, we are mild. We're mild and moderate. So that is our climate category. So then when you look down here, this is how weather people or scientists measure the climate and other points of our weather or atmospheric conditions. And they use a climograph. There are various types of climograph, and we're going to be looking at some of those here in just a minute for a certain city in our country. But a climograph is a graphical representation of a location's basic climate. Makes sense, right? Climographs display data for 2 variables, monthly average temperature and monthly average precipitation, excuse me. These are useful tools to quickly describe a location's climate. Now, there are others as well, like wind velocity and different things like that. So we're going to look at some of those here in just a minute. So climograph is the tool that is used for a type of specific part of geography, a geographical location, whether it's in the world, in our country, even in our own state, or maybe our own city. Now, before we move on, we're going to talk about different types of precipitation. Rain, which we see mostly, you know, it does say that's most commonly observed. The rain is considered to be rain if the drops are larger than a drizzle, which if they're larger than 0.02 of an inch or 0.5 millimeters, that's considered rain. A drizzle is just fairly uniform precipitation composed of exclusively fine drops, kind of like a sprinkle. Then there's ice pellets, which we also call sleet, we know that. Hail, small hail, which are snow pellets, snow grains, and ice crystals. And actually this winter, I don't think we've had a whole lot of this. We've had some snow, but the rest of it, we've had mostly rain and drizzle, it seems like at least. I don't think we've had any ice crystals though, which is good. Ice can be kind of dangerous when you're driving. Anyway, okay, so I said that we were going to talk about the different types of climographs. Here are some of those for the city of Chicago. So if you look at this first one on the left, you see that this is the city of Chicago. It's right on the lake. And then when we look over here, we see the first climograph is measuring the daily chance of precipitation, okay? So it goes by monthly here, but when you look at your key, you see the month and then you see the measurement. And it looks like May is probably the highest point of precipitation for this city. Then here we look at the average high and low temperatures of the city. Okay, so then we would have our key, we would measure what the blue and the red were for. And I think basically we can see just by this, without having a key, that the red is going to be the hottest points and the blue is going to be the coldest points of the city. So we can look at July 18th having the hottest, and it looks like it was 85 degrees, and then the coldest was 60. But if you notice, as you go into the winter months, January and February and December, these highs and lows are a lot different. They're a lot lower, the highs are lower, and the lows are even lower. Okay, so then down here in this climograph, we have the humidity comfort levels. Again, measuring, this is measuring according to degrees, and they also have labels, whether it's comfortable or miserable, and then they have percentages. And then your average monthly rainfall, and then average hourly temperature. So that's something you don't see very often, but hourly, it tells you right there. So these are just some of the, some of the different types of climographs. And, you know, like I said, there's wind velocity as well, which I think I do have one of those here soon. But these are just different things that you can look for. So when creating a climograph of your own, which you're going to be doing later, that's part of your assignment for your distance learning, You can choose a type of measurement that you want to exhibit, that you want to demonstrate, whether it's temperature or precipitation or rainfall or even humidity. Those are different types of climographs that you can choose from. Now, a weather map, we see this a lot on TV. I mean, when you watch the weather on TV, you usually see a weather map that displays the the projection for the different temperatures that are coming up. But as it says here, it displays various meteorological features across a particular area at a particular point in time, and has various symbols which all have specific meanings. Such maps have been in use since the mid-19th century, a little history there, and are used for research and weather forecasting purposes. And again, like I said, if you watch the weather, which I'm sure you do, when you see it on TV, it's going to give you a map, something similar to this. The weatherman will do that, or the weather person will do that. So if you look at this, according to this map, there is no precipitation predicted. Humidity is 32%, and the winds are 11 miles per hour. So at 4 o'clock, here's your time frame. At 4 o'clock, you can expect the winds to be at 11 miles an hour. And these arrows are pointing to the direction. Now, remember back when we first talked about keys, and we were talking about the cardinal key, where it shows the north, the east, the west, and the south. So this would be coming from the north, going to the southeast. So you see that you can see the direction and how it changes throughout the day, starting at 4 o'clock. This goes from 4 until the next day at 1, goes through the night. You can see the temperatures and how they change throughout this time period. And then you can also see the weather. Now, the weather doesn't say rain, snow, or anything like that, but it gives you symbols. We know that this is rain. This means partly cloudy. And then we have more rain at 10 o'clock. So weather maps are used in weather forecasting. They're used in our news channels. Weather forecasting are also used if you're like me and you have a weather bug on your phone. You can see it that way as well. So we use a lot of weather maps. Okay, so let's take a look at some place that, right now would be so nice to go to. West Palm Beach, Florida. Okay, so the climate in West Palm Beach, it's not tropical, it's not Mediterranean. It has, well, it is a little tropical. I apologize that it is a little tropical because of the hurricane season. It is more humid than I would say Kentucky would be because it is right next to the ocean. But it also has the 4 seasons. Now, it doesn't have them as significant as possibly Maine would, but it still has the 4 seasons. And if you look here, you see how these temperatures are exhibited. And you see the months through the year. And again, just like before, the red line shows how hot it gets, that's the high. And the blue line shows the low, how cold it gets. So let's see, this is May. So on an average, it will get about 85 degrees. And then that's the high, and then the low would be about 71. Okay, and here's your key. Here's a key, just like we did before. Over here, we have weather averages, an overview for May, June, July, and August. This is how this is depicted. And also, look, it shows you how many days of rain can be expected. And then over here is just a map that shows you how close it is and how it lays in the ocean. So this gives you a geographical location. This lays it out in a chart, and this gives you an example of the temperatures of it depicted in a climograph. Okay, so I wanted to make sure you saw that because your homework or your distance learning that you will complete and hand into your instructor will be to complete this chart. Practice recording and using data. Complete the chart below. So you have 4 states. You have Kentucky, North Carolina, Arizona, and Colorado. You have a month, 4 months out of the year. And so what you're going to do is you're going to research Kentucky, find the average temperature for Kentucky in June, find the average temperature for Kentucky in July. I'm sorry, for June. Find the average rainfall for Kentucky in June, and what type of climate does Kentucky have. Then for North Carolina, you're going to find an average temperature in July, the average rainfall for North Carolina in July, and then what type of climate does it fall under. The same thing for Arizona and Colorado. Then the second part of your homework assignment would be to select one set of data, whether it's Kentucky and their June average temperature or North Carolina and their rainfall average for July, and you're going to create a climograph for that particular area. Okay, so again, you're going to record your data, complete the chart, and then create a climograph to visually demonstrate the information. All right, but since we're here at the end of the class, you have already learned how to use and how to analyze a climograph. You've been able to identify the difference between two different climates, and you've learned the importance of climate in relation to your everyday life. And the reason why we need to know this, just like with weather, let's say you're going on vacation somewhere and you want to know what to bring, how to dress. Like if you were going to go to Arizona, the climate out there is mostly arid. It has a little bit of desert. Well, it does have desert, and I know this because I am actually from Arizona. But the thing is if you're in the desert area, you know that during the day it's going to be very, very hot, but at night it's going to turn cool. So you need to prepare for that. So knowing the climate, knowing the daily weather, that will help you prepare for whatever you need in order to enjoy your vacation. Okay, so then that's all we're going to do for lesson 2. Now that you know how to use a climograph, next lesson we're going to be using or discussing the difference between a political map and a physical map. So I'm going to leave you today with a little bit of this day in history.
To keep everyone safe during the pandemic, Indiana's upcoming primary election may be conducted mostly through absentee by mail. Registered voters should go to indianavoters.com and request their absentee ballot by Thursday, May 21st. When your ballot arrives, or if it already has, vote for the candidates of your choice. Sign the ballot envelope and mail it back postage-free in time for Election Day, Tuesday, June 2nd. It's democracy to your door, where, of course, it's been living all along.
Here's a look at this day in history. May 14th.
In 1796, British physician Edward Jenner inoculated an 8-year-old boy with the first smallpox vaccine. In 1955, the Warsaw Pact was created by the Soviets and 7 Eastern European communist nations to counter the Western alliance of NATO. Legendary crooner and actor Frank Sinatra died on this day in 1998 at the age of 82. And on this day in 1804, Lewis and Clark set off on one wild road trip. President Thomas Jefferson commissioned the duo to explore Louisiana Territory. Their 50-man expedition left camp near St. Louis and headed into parts unknown. 2.5 years later, the team returned with amazing tales of the Pacific Northwest. And that's this in history.
And that's this day in history, and you have a wonderful day at home. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.